Okay, so this little exercise is to get some practice working with 3D layers. So we're going to import some stuff to begin with. So we're going to go to activity 10.1.1. So we're going to bring these in one at a time. So I'm going to bring in background, and I just want to bring that in straight as it is. Then I'm going to bring in road, so you can see what that is. It's just like a long straight road texture. Next, we're going to bring in this street Photoshop document, but what we're actually going to do is choose the separate layers. So we're going to say open, and then it says footage, choose layer, and I'm going to choose plants and say OK. And then I'm going to repeat that with the same file and choose layer, buildings. So I've got two layers, plants and buildings. So let's have a look at what those look like. So there's my buildings, and there's my plants on their own with a transparent background. There's the road, there's the background. Okay, now we're going to bring in a tree. So we're going to bring it in as footage, and we'll choose the layer tree. So that's what that looks like. And then we're going to bring in an image sequence. So image sequence, and it's a pussycat 000 PNG file. We're going to say bring in PNG sequence and open. Okay, now for this, let me just double click. It's basically just a simple animation of a cat blinking and its tail swishing. So what we want to do with this image sequence is we want to go down here to interpret footage. We're going to set the assume this frame rate to 25, and we're just going to loop it 100 times. That just means we've got plenty of loops to work with. Alright, now we're going to make a composition. We'll call it Pussycat Patrol. We'll make it HDTV 1080-25, and we'll set it to 30 seconds. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the background down here. So background, pop that down here, and we'll fit it. So right click, transform, fit to comp. We can lock that layer now. We are finished with it. The next thing is we're going to take the buildings, so that's buildings street. We're going to dump that on top of the background like that, and we're just going to first of all convert it to a 3D layer. So here I can't see my 3D toggles, so I'm going to click on toggle switches and modes. There's my 3D column. I'm going to click there to make this a 3D layer. Okay. Then I'm going to press R for rotation, so you can see the moment it's 3D, I get X, Y, and Z, not just X and Y. So on the Y rotation, I'm going to change the number of degrees to 90. So it's now basically facing onto me, almost like you're turning a piece of paper so that you don't see it anymore. And I'm going to scale it, so press S. And we're going to just scale any one of these to 227. Alright, so now I'm going to drag on the Z axis here so that the buildings are touching the side of the comp like that. Alright, then I'm going to duplicate that layer, so Command or Control D, and I'm going to drag on just the Z axis to go to the other side, so that I've got the beginnings of what looks like a street. I'm going to repeat this process with the plants now. So plants, drag that above the buildings, make it a 3D layer, R for rotation, 90 degrees on the Y axis, scale it 227, and we're now going to drag it this way, but not all the way, so that it's just kind of sticking out a little bit to create a sort of dimensionality there. Duplicate that layer, Command D, Control D, and move the duplicate to the other side. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the road. So we're going to put the road just above background. So road just above background, make it a 3D layer, R for rotation, and this is going to rotate 90 degrees on the x-axis, and we're then going to drag on the z-axis down till it touches the bottom of the screen, and then we're going to hit S, and we're just going to scale it up until it intersects with the buildings. Okay, like that. Alright, so that's what I want so far. So if you want to see what is this that we're actually building, you can change your view from active camera to custom view 1. Press C for your camera, for your orbit camera, and now you can look around this and see we're actually creating a little 3-dimensional cartoon set. Alright, so it's probably a good idea at this stage to save, just in case you have any performance problems or crashes. So I'm just going to save as, put it on my desktop, and I'll call it Pussycat Patrol. Alright, so once we've done the road, we're now going to bring the tree in. So here's the tree, we're going to drop it at the top. We're going to make it a 3D layer. So you can see it now goes through the road. I'm just going to press S and scale it down a little bit. Okay, I also want to change the anchor point, so A, and on the y-axis, which is the middle value, I want the anchor point to be at the base of the tree, so that any transformations will keep the tree stuck to the ground. Okay, now I can press P for position, and I can change that position to bring the tree back to the ground. Don't want to go all the way through the ground, it just needs to be connecting with that road. Alright, so now I'm going to change from active camera to custom view 1 so I can see what I'm doing, and I'm just going to use my selection tool and on the Z axis I'm going to drag this tree along so that it's kind of at the beginning of the road here. Press C for my orbit camera, and then A for my selection tool. No, that didn't work. Okay, I'm sure it's A. V, sorry. And we're going to move it across so that it's kind of on the side, like it's on part of the sidewalk or something. Okay, then we're going to duplicate that, so Command or Control D, and we're going to move the duplicate to the other side of the road. C for camera, spacebar to move down a bit, and now V for my selection tool. I'm going to move that a little bit down so it's kind of staggered. C for camera. Okay, now I'm going to switch to my top view and just zoom out a bit. Okay, and I'm going to take both of those tree layers, so select both of them, and Command or Control D, and then with my selection tool I'm going to move on the Z axis down again, Command or Control D, Z axis. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trees. Now I'm going to switch back to active camera, and let's just fit this. And now you can see I've got my trees on the scene. Now I just want to adjust a little bit the size of each tree. So leave the first tree at its normal size. The next tree, just scale it up a little bit. The next tree, we can scale down a little bit. You get the idea. So we're just creating some variety so it isn't too obvious that we've got the same tree just duplicated multiple times. Okay, so there's our little set with our trees. Now our layer area is getting a bit complicated, so I'm going to make these tree layers shy. So I'm going to click on the little make shy button, and the same for the plants and the buildings and road and background, and then put on my make shy master switch. So basically those are just hidden in my layers section, but they're still being calculated in the scene. Okay, let's save. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add in some lighting here. So right click, new light, and our first light, we're going to just call it ambient, and we're going to make it a light type ambient. So an ambient light is just light everywhere, it's not in any particular direction. We're going to set the intensity down to 30 and the color to a kind of yellow white. And we're going to say okay. Right, so now the scene looks a little bit dull, but that's just the beginning of our lighting. The next light we're going to put in is for sunlight. So right click, new light, and this we'll call sun, and we'll set it to a parallel light. We'll set the intensity to 100. We'll make sure that cast shadows is on. We'll set the shadow darkness to 100. The color we'll leave at that yellow white color, and we'll say okay. Alright, so now we have got a much brighter light, but we're not casting shadows yet, and that the reason why is because our objects are not set to receive and cast shadows. So unshy all of your layers. We're going to select all the tree layers, the plants and the buildings and the road, not the background, because the background isn't a 2D layer. And then remember, in After Effects, whatever you do to one layer will also happen to all the other layers if they are also selected. So I'm just going to open up one layer here, and you'll see that I have here material options because it's a 3D layer, and you'll see cast shadows is off. Just going to click on the word off to turn that on, and now I can close up that layer. I can click the make shy master switch again. Alright, so now you can see it's clearly casting shadows, but what we want to do is we want to move the position of that sun so that it's casting shadows how we want it to cast shadows. So the easiest way for you to do that is to move the point of interest. In other words, what is the sun pointing at? So I'm going to switch back to custom view, and I'm going to choose the orbit around scene. Okay, and if you keep pressing the C key, you're going to switch between different options. So this is kind of pan, this is dolly, which is moving in and out, and this is orbit. Okay, so I'm going to get a position like that so I can see what's happening with the sun. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Let's press C again and again and move it out a little bit so I can see what's happening. Alright, so now I'm going to take this point of interest and I want to move it on the Z axis. Let me just take it now on the Z axis so that it's more central to the scene. And okay, that's quite nice. And then maybe a little bit on the X axis, just to create a bit more of an angle. No, that's too much. A little bit less. Okay, let's just see what that looks like from the active camera. Okay, there's some nice shadows there now. Alright, so that's our sun done. Now you'll notice that as you start adding things like shadows, your computer is going to struggle more and more to process each frame. So if you get it to the point where you're happy with the shadows and you want to continue working and you're finding that your computer is really slow, you can click on this master switch here, Draft 3D. if you click on Draft 3D, it will stop calculating lighting, which just means it works faster, but your lighting is set up. As soon as you're ready to render, you need to put it back on again. Don't forget to put it back on. Okay, so we now need to add a camera to the scene. So right click, new, camera. Whoops, not null object, camera. Okay, and we're going to set it just to a 50mm camera, and we'll set it to a one node camera, so it's not pointing at anything in particular, and say OK. So the camera is now what we're looking out from. We're going to press P for position, and on our y-axis we're going to move the camera down to kind of pussycat level, where a cat would be on the road, a little bit above the road. And then we're going to move the camera to the other end of the road. So we're going to go to, on the z-axis, I guess about 250. And then we're going to put the stopwatch on, and we're going to go all the way to the end of the timeline, and then change our z-axis to -2000. And we can even take it more than that. What we don't want to see is the end of the buildings. Okay, so that's about right. So what we have is this camera reversing down the road like that, which is exactly what we want. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in the cat. So save it. I'm going to keep saving it just in case. I'm going to bring in the cat, and I'm going to pop him at the top here. Whoops. Why is he not going in there? Oh, sorry. I'm trying to put it the same composition inside itself. This is the pussycat stuff. Okay, so there he is, and you'll see that it's just this footage. So we want him to be 3D. Okay, so now that he's 3D, he disappears, so we need to go and find him. So let's just switch to our top view, and there he is. It's a bit too big there, so I'm going to scale, bring him down. Okay, then I need to switch to my front view, and I can see that he's right up in the air there. So on the y-axis, I'm going to bring him down, and then let's look at the left view. And where's my camera? My camera is there, and he is there. So camera, and he needs to be in front of the camera. So selection tool, and we're going to move him on the z-axis, so he's in front of the camera. And then what we're going to do is we're going to parent him to the camera. So with the pick whip, we're going to parent pussycat to camera. So if I switch back to camera view, I can now just adjust the pussycat. So on the z-axis, I'm going to move him away a bit. Okay, so he's about that big, and then down. Whoops. Okay, he doesn't need to be going through the pavement, so that means I need to just move him a bit closer and just scale him down a little bit more. Oops, too much. Okay, position. So you just got to play around with this position, and I'm going to bring him forward. Okay, that's kind of what I want. So I just want him to be at the bottom there, so that his tail goes like that, and he looks like he's actually following the camera. Okay, but the problem at the moment is that he looks like he's on a skateboard, because he's not actually going up and down like a cat would do if they were strolling or walking. So we need to create that up and down motion. So I'm going to go to the beginning, 0 seconds. I'm going to put the stopwatch on for position, and then I'm going to go to half a second, which will be approximately 12 frames. sorry, I'm going to go to 1 second first, so 1 dot enter, so I'm at 1 second. I'm going to make another keyframe at that position. Then I'm going to go in between to 12 frames, so halfway between those frames, and I'm going to move him down a little bit, just a little bit, not that much, so that there's this motion. He goes up, down and up, down and up. And then I just want this animation to loop over and over again. So this is something you learned quite early on in the course. Hold down Alt, click on the stopwatch, go to your menu for your expressions and go to Property, Loop Out, type equals cycle, num keyframes equals 0. And then just click away. So if I now just scrub the playhead, you'll see that I have my cat kind of moving up and down as he goes. Alright, and if I just stop somewhere and just put my draft button off and let it calculate, you'll see the cat also is in the shadows. I actually want him to be a little bit more in the sunlight, so I'm going to go to the camera and choose my camera transform. Where's my point of interest? No, sorry, not camera point of interest. What am I doing? It's the sun point of interest. I think I'm just going to move the x-axis over a little bit so that we get some, yeah, that looks nicer. Okay, so he's kind of getting a bit of shadows on him, but also getting a bit of dappled sunlight. Okay, so we now have a pretty cool little cartoon animation that we've done very quickly using flat images in a 3D space to create a set. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and see you next time.